Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, welcome. Today I want to go over what's behind me here, and that is the Infinite Defense Infinity Targets, self-healing rubber targets. Let's get into them. So before we do that, if you could hit that like, share, and subscribe button, leave a comment down below. Sharing is the easiest and freest way to support the channel. Helps get the videos out there and helps signal to YouTube that 2A and shooting content is popular, and maybe they will start unblocking some of us and letting us work our way into the algorithm. Now, to be completely transparent, I am an affiliate of Infinite Defense Infinity Targets. However, I have 4 targets. I have purchased 3 of them. I won one of them at the Bang and Buy event at Cowtown Range outside of Phoenix last weekend. That was a very fun time. Thank you to Click Bang for putting that on. Very, very good time. So I won one and I bought 3. However, I am an affiliate of of their website, of their business. So if you purchase through the link that I'm going to put in the pinned comment, I do get a small commission out of that. However, that in no way affects my honesty or my bias as far as telling you about these targets. Why rubber targets? I've talked about rubber targets in the past, and rubber targets are nothing new, although these are a little bit different than many of them out there. So why rubber targets over something like steel or paper/cardboard? There are many advantages to rubber over those two. Starting with steel, while it has a very pleasant ring to it, instant gratification, you know you hit the target. Oftentimes it's hard to track your hits due to fragmentation, peeling large swaths of paint off the target as opposed to leaving little tiny holes. Also, you shouldn't shoot steel targets at extremely close ranges, down to a couple feet like you can rubber targets. Of course, steel targets are very heavy. Steel targets can't be generally used indoors, and you end up, or at least I end up, tearing up a lot of 2x4s with my steel targets every month. And anybody who's been to the depot lately knows that wood is not getting any cheaper. So it does save me a ton of money as it pertains to shredding wood from the steel targets. Paper or cardboard targets, while they can be used indoors, they tend to be very consumable. You get a handful of holes in it. Depending on what you're doing with it, you might get a few shots in it to maybe several hundred shots, depending exactly what you're doing with it. But then you have to rip it off, replace it, time, money. I go through probably $300 or so worth of cardboard targets every year. So buying a couple cans of paint, which we'll get into here in a second because you can spray paint these, buying a couple cans of paint that last a couple months at a time is a far less expensive way for me to go about it. So those are just some of the advantages to rubber versus steel or cardboard. Also cardboard, if you get close enough to it, and I don't even mean muzzle on the target, but if you get close enough to it, you can shred a big hole in the cardboard, and it's of course done at that point. So let's get closer to these targets, talk about them. I have Gen 1 and Gen 2 out here. I also have an unshot, non-fired upon, however you say it, Gen 2 sitting on my tailgate that you get a better close-up picture of, and talk about these. So here is a Gen 1 target. Here's a Gen 1 target. I do like the Gen 2s over the Gen 1s, but if you're balling on a budget and you're looking for rubber targets, Gen 1s are very usable. The Gen 1 is a little bit looser packed, not as dense, I guess it would be the word for it. It doesn't take paint quite as well, and it doesn't heal quite as well as the Gen 2. Of course, you're talking about a lesser expensive target, so there has to be a give somewhere. Now these are not drawn on or painted on lines. One of the ways that you can keep spraying this and keep seeing the lines is these are actually cut in grooves that I imagine would take many rounds in order to get those grooves to go away to where you can't see where you're hitting. Now these targets, Gen 1 and 2, will take over 100 rounds per square inch of 5.56 223. That is a ton of shots. I mean, we're talking about 6 inches by whatever that is, 10 inches. That's 60 square inches of space. That is 6,000 rounds of 5.56 223 that you can put, over 6,000 rounds that you can put in this square. So that is very nice. They do come with the clamps. Gen 1 and 2 both come with clamps. I have them clamped onto 2x2s, which is what I normally use for cardboard targets. When it comes to the Gen 1s are a little bit thicker than the Gen 2s. And so the clamps are almost at the edge of their ability when it comes to that, but if you're using furring strips, the 1-bys, you're good with either one. Now coming to the back side here, I don't know how well this is coming across on camera, but you can see that there are actual chunks taken out of the back here. The face is very self-healing of the Gen 1s. The backs of the Gen 1s tend to take a little bit more abuse than the Gen 2s. However, we're talking about many rounds in this area at this point of both 5.56 and 9mm. So you can only self-heal so often before you do start seeing damage. Now this is the Gen 1 that I've had the longest. It's starting to see a lot of bad wear in the back side of the head, but this has, throughout this area, has several thousand rounds through it. I've had this one for about a month, I guess, and I've been using only infinite defense targets since I got these. So all of my shooting, all of my videoing, everything, all the training with not just me but other people have been on these targets, specifically this one the most since I've gotten it. However, while there's some damage here, I still would have gone through many pieces of cardboard to this point. Now here you can see the Gen 1s are about as wide as my finger. That's probably close to 3/4 of an inch, about as wide as my finger, just a shade narrower. But you can see really on the side here how it's not quite as dense. You can actually kind of flake a little bit of it off. Now we get into the Gen 1s, or the Gen 2s, I'm sorry, you get into the Gen 2s. The Gen 2s are far more dense rubber. You can see it plain as day just by looking at it on the camera here. The same cut grooves, the same or better performance as far as the amount of rounds it can take and how it heals up. Although the thing is the same size, still comes with the clamps, same size torso, same size target. You can get them in sheet style targets, which is more of a square, and it has the torso or the silhouette cut into it, much like these are cut into it. You can get C-zone targets, you can get these full-size silhouettes as well. Now as you can see here, this is significantly thinner when I put my finger up to it, and it makes for the clamping of it much easier. So being thinner also means it is lighter weight. So when you're carrying these around the range, things like that, these are easier to put up by yourself. Now here is the back of the Gen 2. Back of the Gen 2, as you can see, is just pock marks as opposed to larger chunks sort of missing. I would say this Gen 2 has 3 to 5 times more, if not more than that, maybe 10 times the amount of rounds through it that first Gen 1 did that had some of the chunks missing. So this has a far better healing property to it than the Gen 1s. Now as you can see here is the Gen 2 that I won at the Bang & Buy event. Very nice target. It does have some discoloration on it because it's been sitting in the back of my truck for a week. Had a box sitting on top of it, so that's where the box was. But you can see how white it was when I first got it. These are weatherproof, they're waterproof, things like that. Ever since I got them, they have been sitting in the back of my truck, even to the oldest one. And out here in the really, really dry Arizona desert and sun, they haven't fallen apart. So I think that's good. Now, a couple warnings about these targets is they prefer you not to shoot closer than about 15, 20 yards, something like that, with birdshot or buckshot. And that is because as birdshot or buckshot comes out of the tube, out of the barrel, it still has a very tight pattern, depending on what your choke is and things like that. But it still has a very tight pattern, and you can only self-heal so much. What I mean by that is this. Ew. Yeah. So I did blow a hole right in the chest of, this is one of the first ones I bought. Blew a hole right in it. That was 10 yards with a Mossberg shockwave and birdshot. So yeah, you can't self-heal from basically a solid projectile this big. They also suggest that you don't use hollow points because, let's face it, hollow points have a specific design to it, and that is to gobble up as much material as it is going through it. So it is designed to make holes that won't self-heal. So don't use hollow points, don't use slugs, don't use wad cutters. Things that are designed to make giant fucking holes, don't use those, because again, you can only self-heal so much. They also suggest that you don't put your muzzle of your pistol or rifle directly against the target. Not only is this a possible safety issue, depending on what porting you have in your muzzle, things like that, but the blast coming out is not just fire and hot, but it's very violent. And again, I'm going to go back to, you can only self-heal so much. However, you can do up close stuff like retention pistol shooting and things like that. I've walked almost right up to a target with a rifle without any issues, things like that. So they are able to be used in very close quarters. These would be great targets for CQB, things like that. For my money, I say the Gen 2s, they're a lighter target, they're a thinner target, they have far better self-healing properties, they take paint better because they're more dense, less porous than the Gen 1s. However, again, on the Gen 1s, while this one has a hole in it because I'm an idiot, the Gen 1s, if you're balling on a budget, work exceedingly well themselves. So that's it. That is it for Infinite Defense Infinity targets. I'm sure you've seen them all over the place. There's a lot of big channels that have been using these. So I'm sure this isn't the first time you've heard of them, but very nice targets. Cool company. I did get a chance to talk to these guys at the event I was at. Awesome people. They are local in Arizona. They're up in Phoenix, so I love working with and supporting local companies as well. Again, I am an affiliate, just to be transparent. So if you do buy from the link that I'm supplying you, I do get a small amount from that. However, it doesn't cost you anything extra. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. If you want to become a member of the channel, it's very easy and very inexpensive. You get video previews, you get unboxings and other members only posts and things like that. Appreciate it, everybody out there, and we'll talk to you later.